Welcome to another episode of the VTEC Academy. You're about to get schooled. About a year ago, I helped Speed Academy with an engine swap they were doing. And they were putting a K-series in an EK. And they opted to use the KTuner ECU, which is a little bit different than the Hondata ECU. The Hondata ECU is by far the most popular ECU for the engine swaps, and so a lot of companies make an adapter harness that's specifically made for use with the Hondata ECU. If you want to use it with a KTuner ECU though, it doesn't quite work. There are a few changes that need to be done. So although I promised to do this article about a year ago, I apologize, I'm finally getting around to it, but let me show you what changes you have to make to your conversion harness so that it's compatible with the KTuner ECU and the later style electronics. First thing you need to know is the engine harnesses you're going to use are typically 0506 RSX or the Honda Element. You can also use a manual transmission Accord. The one that's actually the 05 manual transmission Accord. The one that's actually easiest to use though is the 05 RSX because of this plug right here. This is called the C101 plug, and basically it's pinned more or less the same on the 01 to 04 as it is 0506 with just a few small changes. If you opt to use an element harness, everything's backwards. So you have to totally repin this harness or your element harness. If you're using a cord harness, this is completely missing. So right now I'm going to show you how to convert this harness for use with an 05, 06 RSX engine harness and KTuner ECU. So let's talk a little bit quickly about the tools I'm using. These are a pair of crimpers. This particular brand is made by iWis. There'll be a link to it on VTEC Academy website. These things are a little less than 30 bucks, and they do an excellent job of super tight crimps on the wires for this. Of course, you need some strippers and cutters. Strippers are good. Next, you're going to need something for slicing open the insulation on the harness. I prefer these knives, much harder to cut yourself with. We're going to need a pick tool for the E-plug. It needs to be only 1 millimeter wide. You can buy this. This is actually a specialty tool that comes with 3 other tools you can buy on Amazon. I'll have a link to that. Or one of my favorite ones is the is the Weha 1 millimeter flathead screwdriver. That one I like a lot as well. Anyway, and then a pick tool for opening up the locks on the C101 plug and the ECU plug. Next, you need a good quality tape. Don't scrimp on this. Go out and buy yourself some Scotch Super 33 Plus. It's high temp resistant. I've had these in cars 10 years old and the tape was holding up very, very well. So don't scrimp on that. It's only about 3 bucks a roll anyway. Next, we're going to need a little bit of wire. This is we're going to have to add a wire in there. So 18 to 22 gauge. This is 20 gauge. I find that works pretty well. And then we're going to need some connectors. These particular connectors are the male connectors that go in the C101 plug. And these connectors over here are the E-pin connectors. And they're quite a bit smaller. But our iWis crimpers have 3 different sizes of crimp. So they'll crimp any of those really well. Okay, so the first step for doing this is we need to unwrap the harness a little bit. We're going to be making some changes at the C101 plug and also at the ECU E plug. So I'm just going to go ahead and strip back all the tape right here. For that I have my knife. Get everything out of the way so I'm not flinging stuff everywhere. The first thing we're going to do is move one of the wires. This is wire right here is for the immobilizer to turn on the fuel pump relay. Anyway, the way these these connectors are wired are numbered is you turn it with the clip side up. That tells you it's top. Then you start on the top left-hand side and you go across 1, 2, 3, etc. We're going to take E1 out of it right now. The first thing we have to do is we have to unlock this clip right here. This little lock is what prevents the pins from popping out. So we're going to lift that up. Now that we've got that up, it's unlocked. So we go back to our pin number 1. As you can see right here, this bottom rectangular hole, that is where the ECU pin actually plugs in. And right above it is an access hole. We can go in there with our 1mm wide pin tool, slide it in, and you'll get in there and you'll feel a plastic tang. You just lift it up. Once you do that, you can pull it right out like that. Now, it's probably not going to be quite that easy the first time you do it. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you get good at it, you can do it rather quickly. All right, now that we've got that pin out, we are going to put it into a new hole. So again, we would count out the number of pins we have. Again, we want to move it from number 1 to number 17. Having done this a few times, I happen to know right above this blank, right down here, that's 16, so we want to go right there, number 17. Make sure you orient it the same way that it came out. That means these two little tabs on top face upward towards the clip. Slide it in and you should hear it click. Give it a tug after you hear it click. If it stays in, you're good. Okay. Now the next one we're going to remove is number 26. That's here on the bottom. That's this blue wire right here. That's actually our tach signal or engine speed pulse. So we need to pull that one out as well. So we're going to again slide in to that hole till we feel the little tab, lift it, and pull the pin out. Pin comes out. We're going to move it over 1. It goes from 26 to 25. It clicked in, we're good to go. All right, so that is the 2 wires that we have to swap around on here. Now what we need to do is we need to take 2 of the wires out of the C101 plug and put them in here. So again, we're going to start off by unlocking the connector. On this particular one, we're going to do wire number 3 first. Again, if you look at it from let's see, this is a male connector as opposed to a female connector. So rather than looking at it from the wire side, we're going to look at it from the front side. So it goes 1, 2, 3. So we're going to take wire number 3, which is white-green. That's this one right here. So we need to unlock this clip. We start off by prying up the edges. They're locked down. Then we can take a clip like that, and it actually slides out. You can see these little tabs actually slide into the connector, and that's what holds the pin in. Okay, so very similar to the way the other one worked. We grab hold of the wire, we're going to flip it over. This time we're going to slide on top of the pin until we hit that little plastic tang. Interesting to do this when I'm not looking at it, so the camera is. So we're going to slide it in there. By the way, you don't want to be pulling on the wire while you're doing this because it locks the tab down. You just basically want to be holding on to it. And it comes right out. Now this wire is not going to change positions here. It actually has to come all the way out and be fed over to our E-plug right here. So we're going to bring it across, measure it out to right about there. We're going to cut it. Then we're going to strip it. Don't need very much. And that's all you really need. Now, something that's interesting about this is some of these holes on the E-plug are rather small, so we're actually going to take away a little extra of the insulation just to make it easier to get it in there. So this is a pro tip, by the way. You're just going to go in there and cut away 4 sides of the wire. So this piece of wire that you stripped off, you want to make sure it comes all the way past, just past that edge right there. So when you put it on, make sure the wire just protrudes ever so slightly past those little tabs that are coming up, the ones that we're going to be rolling down. Then we just set this in there, ratchet it down, pull it out, and you can see it's crimped on really nice and tightly. Alright, now once we've got that crimped on, we need to insert it into the E-plug. So this particular one is our VSS output. So we are going to go to E26 and slide it in there. This is where the engine speed pulse was just a while ago. It clipped in, and that wire is all set to go. All right, so the next one we're going to do is this green wire at number 7. So we count across again. We get to number 7. That's this green wire right here. We've already got that clip unlocked, so we're going to take it out. This happens to control our fans on the on a car. That wire actually goes also to the radiator fan switch wiring, but it's kind of like a backup. The ECU also controls the radiator fan, so just in case it sees too much temperature, it'll turn the radiator fans on as well. So let me get that. Lift the tab. You know, these give me much more trouble than the E-plug. There we go. What happens is I'll quite often slide this in and I'll actually, unfortunately, stick it in there as opposed to slide it along the top, which is what you should be doing. You're supposed to be sliding it along the top, and then there's a plastic tab that sits down in this hole right here. So you slide it along, then you lever the tab up, and then it pulls it out. Okay, just like the other one, this one is going to go over to our E-plug. So we'll bring it over there, measure it off, cut it short, strip back about, I don't know, less than a 1/4 inch of insulation there. Again, I'm going to trim it down so that it's thinner. A little surgery. You could also strip it back further, but I prefer the connector to be grabbing onto some of the insulation, not just wire. I think it makes for a much stronger connection. All right, that's trimmed back. Get my E-pin connector, slide it on. You can see the wires just barely extend past that. Now when I put the crimpers on this time, I'm going to try and bring the edge of the crimper right to the edge of that metal as well. There we go. And crimp it down. There we go. Nice strong crimp. You can see it's just ever so slightly flared outward, just shy of that edge. That's done, and this particular one goes into the E-plug at number 12. Our second row is where number 12 is. So, oops, can't turn it upside down. That would be a problem. So, if you go to the second row and count, that one, by the way, happens to be number 10, 11, 12. So the third hole over, number 12, we're going to slide that in there. It's locked in. All right, so we got our other wire placed in. Now we have one more wire we're going to add. This particular one is for the reverse lockout. If you've got a 5-speed, you don't need it. But if you've got a 6-speed, you're going to want this in there as well. This wire we're going to have to add in. On the RSX, the reverse lockout was, I believe, on the A plug. On this particular harness, though, it's actually on the E plug. We need to get that signal to our harness, so we're going to run a wire from the E plug over to the C101 plug. So let's start off by stripping it off a little bit. All right. Then we're going to take our E-pin, put it on. Now this wire is a little bit lighter gauge. This is a 20 gauge wire as opposed to 18 gauge, so I don't really need to go in there and trim it like I did the other ones. Oopsie. All right, got it on. It's crimped. All right. By the way, check and make sure you didn't deform it when you crimped it. Otherwise, it's really hard to get in there. Okay, and this one is going to go to the E plug number 2. Remember we pulled a wire out of 1, so the space right next to it is number 2. So let's slide that in there. Listen to it click into place. There we go, it's connected. Now we're going to take our wire, bring it through the harness. Measure it out to where it should be. I'm going to clip it off. Again, we're going to strip back some wire. So for this end, we're going to use a different pin. We're going to use the C101 pin. It's a male pin. And you notice it's a little bit bigger than the E pin we were just using. In fact, quite a bit bigger. About twice as big. So we're going to be using a different part of the crimper to do that. We use the smallest setting for the E plugs. We're going to use the second largest setting for this particular plug. You can actually use the largest one as well. But first thing you want to do is notice how it's kind of flared out. You want to make those square. So a pair of pliers, or in my case I'm going to use my cutters. We're going to square up those sides. This is going to make it go into our crimper a lot better, a lot more easily. Okay, they're squared up. We've already stripped it, so we're just going to, we can just set it in there like that, but here, let's do it like this. We're going to take our crimpers and we're going to put this, kind of load it in there a little bit. Okay, it's in there. I'm going to hold it in place by clamping down slightly. Then I'm going to slide my wire in there and then crimp it all down. Now, give a good tug on it to make sure it's in there. You can see these have been rolled into the insulator, so they're going to hold on. You can see that's holding on the wire really well. So it's on there. So next thing we need to do, so we need to come back to our C101 plug. This time it's going to go into position number 12. Now there's 10 wires on top, so it's going to have to go in here on the bottom. Again, if we count from male pin, count from left to right, there's 10, 11, 12. So it's going to be the second one on the bottom here. First thing we need to do again is unlock it. Pull that all the way out. Now we're going to go into the second one. Go ahead and take a look at the wires on the front side and make sure it's oriented the same way, because if you don't, it won't work. So we're going to slide it until it clicks. It's locked in there. Now we've made the entire changes we need to do wiring-wise to this plug. So we are ready to put it all back together. Start off by inserting the plugs back in, clipping them down. Same thing with the other side. Slide it in. move it down. All right, that's all sealed up. Same thing with the E-plug. This lock now needs to reseat. If it doesn't seat all the way, like you can see it's slightly up on this side, that means one of the wires is not quite seated all the way. So let's take a look. On that particular side, we added this green-white wire. So let's lift our tabs back up. Make sure the green one's seated all the way in there, and then close it all back up again. That is flush this time, so it's fully locked in there. That means, by the way, if it's lifted at all, it's not going to plug into your ECU, so you want to make sure it's smashed down all the way. Okay, that's done. Now all we need to do is tape it all up again. To wrap it up, we're going to use our Scotch Super 33 Plus, and basically start at one end and work your way towards the middle. All right, I'm going to pause here for a second. I'm going to show you guys a pro tip. Let me show you something about tape. I've been pulling it fairly tight and kind of stretching it a little bit, but once you get to the point where you want to end, cut the tape, let it relax, and just push it on, don't stretch it. If you stretch it, what's going to happen is, over time, it's going to recede and it's going to leave a sticky film there, and it's actually not going to be as effective. So when you're down to the end, give yourself about 1 inch of limp tape, okay, and then just go ahead and just push it down rather than stretch it on. When you're doing the actual taping, you can stretch it. That'll hold everything tight. But for that last little bit, just kind of push it down. Do not stretch it. Well, there we go. Now, I actually have a cheat sheet built to tell you which wires go where, so you don't have to memorize what's going on. If you visit our VTEC Academy website, there will be a little chart there to show you what you're going to do. Now, some of the conversion harnesses actually come with a secondary O2 sensor as well, and there is a couple of extra steps you have to do if you're using secondary O2 sensor. But if you're just using an EG, this is all there is to it. If you've got an EK wiring harness, it's exactly the same. There are no changes to what you're going to move on this. It's just the same. Now, if you guys are not interested in doing your own wiring, you can actually purchase pre-converted harnesses from Hasport. We actually make them for the KTuner, for using with the KTuner system, as well, of course, as the Hondata ones. But a lot of people are buying these things used or picking them up from somebody else. And if you would like to use a KTuner and you need to know how to do it, just go to VTECacademy.com and you can download the handy chart, watch the video to see how it's done, and you can be a wiring expert as well. Anyway, thanks again for joining us here at VTEC Academy. You can follow us on Facebook at VTEC Academy. You can follow me, Brian, at Hasport on VTEC Academy, or on Instagram. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. We'll try to get to them. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.